All right, welcome back. At this point, we have a paddle that can reflect the ball. We have ball that will reset if it misses either side. And we want to bring that right paddle to life. Now that we only control one paddle at a time, let's give it a way to defend itself. So a little bit of logic for how to update the number, right? Because we have paddle2y representing the position of that paddle. At the top of move everything, let's make a function called computer movement. Before it, let's set it up and make one called computer movement. And we don't have to make a function for this. It's just going to be calling this block of code from there so that it's going to be a little bit easier to separate out what code is for that as opposed to other purposes. And all we need to think in terms of is the paddle for the other player above the ball? If so, move it down a little. Paddle to y plus, let's say 6. I don't know. We'll go back and we'll experiment. Otherwise, if it's not above the ball, it must be below the ball. So let's have it move up 6. A quick reminder on what's going on here. It's taking the value that was currently stored there, let's say 250, and then adding 6 to it, so it becomes 256. Setting it equal, so overriding, storing into the label going forward. So if it was 250, it becomes 256. On the next cycle through, it could become 262 and so on. Or the other direction, we'll see subtracting from it. But these operations are so common in programming where you want to add or subtract to a number. We did the same thing down here for the ball speed, right? That it's got this unfortunate side effect of like, well, what if you accidentally made a copy and paste error and this symbol wasn't the same as that? What if you accidentally like had a different variable here? So there's a different notation that compacts this, in which I can say plus equals 6 will mean the same as what it had there, or minus equals 6 will mean the same as what it had there. Let me show you the format down here too, but I'm going to walk you through it. So instead of saying ball x equals ball x plus ball speed x, I can say ball x plus equals ball speed x and ball y plus equals ball speed y. We have one less point of potential error there for a typo to happen. And then additionally, it's just more compact. It's just, a little quicker, rolls off the tongue easier. And what it means is add 6 to the value and then store it back into it. That's why the equal sign is essential, right? Because if you just wrote, this variable plus 6, that's the same as having typed on that line. Okay, so that variable, let's say it has 250 plus 6. That's the same as having typed 256 with a semicolon after it. You're not telling the computer to do anything with that number. The equal sign is what's telling it, okay, once you calculate that addition or that subtraction, save it back into the variable. That's why the equal sign is also there. You can also do this with multiplication or division. So, okay, so we've got this thing which should check if the paddle's above the ball, it'll go down, and if it's below the ball, it'll go up. Let's see. Saved it, refresh, and hey, look, it's doing a crummy job of playing. It's jittery, it's awful. Something else to look out for is that it is in fact lining up the top corner of the paddle with the ball instead of the center. Which, remember, it's just like we did for the player's mouse coordinate here to map to the center of the paddle. Instead of comparing the top of the paddle, what we really want to compare is the center of the paddle. Var paddle2y center. Might as well capitalize that C for consistency. Consistency, but tish equals paddle2y plus paddle height divided by 2. Remember, so since this value is the top of the paddle, this will add half the height and give me the center point. Because what we really want to know isn't where's the top of the paddle relative to the ball, but where's the center of the paddle relative to the ball, and this is what's going to give me an answer to that question. So I save that. We should see the paddle now keeping a much better lock on being roughly centered. Now there's another problem with this though, and you see it's very, very shaky and jerky. Right? And what's happening is it's moving a full 6 units every time, even if it doesn't need to. So it's overstepping, understepping, going back and forth with the ball. And we can kind of alleviate that a little bit if we say, okay, once you're close enough, stop moving any closer. Right? So instead of saying like if it's above it, if it's above, I don't know, 35 pixels of it, ish, And that's just the side, if our paddle's like 100 tall, and it's kind of a reasonable chunk. And we can make that a percentage of paddle height, but we're just trying to get something working. And instead of having an else which says, well, if it's not going down, then shake it up, we'll have another if condition there too. Have an if-else chain. If it's within a 70 pixel sort of, you think of as band where the center of the paddle is, it'll sit still. And that should give us much more reasonable. It's still a little bit jerky as it tries to catch up to the ball, but you can see it's not quite as bad. It's not doing the shaking back and forth as it was doing a moment ago. First, let's just put some text on the display. I'm going to go into draw everything. Let's draw the scores last. You never want scores and user interface information to be overlapped by stuff from your game, and it looks kind of weird. Canvas context dot fill text. I'm going to say score stuff, doesn't matter, 100, 100. And it's going to display this text with the last fill color that we've set. Let me zoom in on that. It's going to display this text at position horizontal X, vertical 100. So X and Y, 100, 100. 100 pixels from the side, 100 pixels from the top. And fill text is going to inherit whatever fill color we've been using, which in this case has been white for basically everything. There we see the word score stuff. Now all we have to do is hook that up to a score variable. Let's add one for player, how do you want to call this? Player 1 score equals 0. Player 2 score equals 0. Each player has a score, which is going to start out at 0. Let's go to where the ball resets, where we call reset. So if it passes off the left side of the screen, then we want to give, if it gets past the paddle on this side, I notice the part that's get past because it's resetting the ball. If it gets past the left side, then we give player 2 a point. And remember, we can use a shorthand here of saying plus equals 1, instead of saying equals player 2 score plus 1. There's a shorter form that just says plus equals. And we'll do the same thing down here. For if the ball escapes off the right side without being blocked, then we increase the player 1 score by 1. And here's another shortcut. So plus 1 and minus 1 are so common that you don't actually have to go all the way of saying plus equals 1. You can just say plus plus, and that adds 1 to something. Or you can do minus minus, and it subtracts 1 from something. So there's so often in code when we want to count something or increase something just one at a time. It's a little shortcut to give us. It does exactly the same thing. It's equally valid to say plus equals 1. But let's go and use plus plus to be good practice to see how that works. So it's increasing those scores. And now, instead of displaying the word score stuff, let's display player 1's score on the left side of the screen. And let's display player 2's score, canvas.width minus 100, right, will give us the same position from the right side, except we'll make that player 2 score. Save, refresh. You see now we have a 0 in each side. It's going to be tough to beat that player, but I'll dodge the ball, and you see he got a point. Now I got a point. He got a point. She did. And the scoring seems to work. When I block it, no scores change. So there we have scoring. Our core gameplay is already in place. All that's left is drawing the net and a little bit of ball control, because right now the game's kind of lame, and ball control is really important. So I'm going to walk you through that in this next video.